Jengalang albume kuseni Sweetie baby Jack stop sweet Jengalang sit back again Sweetie baby Jack stop sweet The taste of your lips on mine Sweetie baby Jack stop sweet Tender like a baby So easy, so easy So easy, so easy Tender good baby You make it easy Check out the formula baby So easy, so easy So easy, so easy You make it easy Check out the formula baby Ben soigo basema tandweni Sama we look bigger infizi oyami Wafika when one boni sutando Wandi kutaza ngotando lwako Jengalanga alpume kuseni Sweetie baby Jack stop sweet Jengalanga sit back again Sweetie baby Jack stop sweet The taste of your lips on mine Sweetie baby Jack stop sweet Tender like a baby Stop sweet So easy, so easy
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Investing at the Monroe webinar. Thank you for making time this afternoon, Tuesday, and a very cold Tuesday afternoon. We are living in very unprecedented times. It's quite hectic out there, but I hope that you are safe, you are keeping warm and keeping positive. So this, for those that haven't, met me before, my name is Bonolo Modise, and I am part of the EasyProperties marketing team, and I'm not alone. I'm with Andrew from Narrative, our partners at Narrative, and he will introduce himself and tell you more about Narrative. So thank you. I hope you have, your notebooks ready. And more importantly, I hope that you will be equipped and ready to invest in our latest IPO by the end of this webinar. I can see people say my network is a bit bad. I will try and reconnect and hopefully it will be better. Please give me a second. Apologize. But in the meantime, I will not waste any of your time. I will hand over to Andrew and he will just introduce himself and tell us a bit more about Narrative. Over to you, Andrew.
Awesome, thanks Bonolo, and thanks to everyone for joining today's call. As Bonolo said, it's there's far more exciting things to be focusing on today on the news, so we appreciate the time and for everyone being here. So my name is Andrew Hartogh. I form part of the Narrative team. And Narrative are EasyProperties partners in this business. Narrative is a Joburg-based property development and investment firm. We form part of a broader group of companies that has interests across the property spectrum. So that includes residential, hospitality, retail, commercial, virtually every touch point of property in South Africa, and also some exposure abroad. Our job as EasyProperties partners is to source new opportunities, negotiate deals for the business, and then to present these deals for approval to the EasyProperties Investment Committee. So the deals that you ultimately see on the platform are deals that we've sourced and put forward to the committee. So the latest deal, as you guys know, that's been put forward is the Monroe and Rosebank. And I'm here today to talk through the metrics of that deal. And to also cover any kind of general queries or friction points that currently exist within the platform. We We recently celebrated our first anniversary as EasyProperties, as you guys might have seen. And it's been an incredible journey. We've been overwhelmed with the response to the platform. It's been very exciting for us. And a brilliant part of the process has been the level of engagement that we've had with all of the users on the platform. So I love the level of engagement that we've had, and very eager to hear any feedback that you guys can give us about how we can make it better.
Thank you so much, Andrew. As you mentioned, EasyProperties celebrated their 1-year anniversary, you know, and we've been partners for a year. Before we get into the details and the cracks of everything Monroe, tell us a bit about what you look for as a business before partnering with platforms like EasyProperties.
So EasyProperties was the concept of fractional ownership, at least, was something that that we'd been interested in for a while. I've been a long-time fan of the EasyEquities business, and so ultimately we connected the dots, and EasyProperties was born out of a cold email to the EasyEquities team, where we pitched this, we brought this idea, and ultimately they've just been world-class in the execution of it. The EasyEquities base, as you know, is I think the largest investor base in South Africa now, and EasyProperties has been very fortunate to leverage off of that. So in this case, it was an easy choice. EasyEquities were for us the best choice of partner for this fractional ownership type business.
That is amazing, and thank you for partnering with us. We are so grateful to have partners like Narrative who select, you know, the best properties for our investors. And talking about,
and I got to meet celebrities like you as well, Benola, which has been great.
I'm not sure if I'm a celebrity, but thank you, Andrew. I'm honored. Talking about properties, how do you go about selecting the products that you put on the EasyProperties platform?
So this is very much our business. We in the game, and we're looking at property opportunities all day, every day. As I've mentioned, we do form part of a bigger group that has interests outside of just residential property. So we've got access to constant deal flow and constant information about the property space. We say no to far more properties than we say yes to. And the properties that ultimately do arrive on EasyProperties have been through a fairly rigorous kind of scrutiny. Well, they've been through rigorous scrutiny and a thorough diligence process. So yeah, we're seeing these things all the time. Sometimes opportunities are brought to us. Sometimes we see something that we like and we pursue a transaction there. But I think that as EasyProperties grows, the quality of the deals that are going to be available to us as well are only going to improve over time.
Absolutely, absolutely. So in your opinion, how would you describe the current property landscape in South Africa?
So we're obviously in a very unique set of circumstances at the moment, barring all of the unrest of the last few days. We've also, obviously, COVID has been a very unique set of circumstances. The major effect of that on the property space is that there's obviously been a lot less business travel, a lot less leisure travel. So the impact on the residential property market has been that there's ultimately less spend on those types of properties. Short stay accommodations been under pressure as a result. But that's not always going to be the case. Not very long ago, those were the types of properties that were delivering the best types of returns. And I think that post-COVID and post-vaccine rollouts, et cetera, and when things normalize, those types of assets will be back in vogue. You will have seen from the properties that we've listed on the platform of late, my preference at the moment is to focus more on the affordable space in the residential property market, just because we know that there's constant demand there right now, and it just seems to be a more defensive type of investment.
That is very exciting. And now we are going to dive into now the meatiness of the Monroe, what has brought us here, you know, the purpose of this webinar. What is different about the Monroe as compared to all of the properties that we currently have on our platform?
Sure. So first and foremost, EasyProperties is about access. And what Monroe represents to us is firstly our first asset that we've listed in the area of Rosebank. For me, Rosebank is one of the most prestigious areas in Johannesburg at the moment. It's definitely an area that's on the rise as far as I'm concerned. There's kind of a shift that's happening from Sandton being the place to be to Rosebank being more and more the place to be. So it's the first Rosebank asset that we've listed. I'll cut to the crux of why I like the Monroe so much. Ultimately, what we've been able to do with the Monroe is because we're buying a large block of units as EasyProperties, we've been able to negotiate an attractive entry price from the developer. That's one of the key aspects that's probably undersold about EasyProperties. We're buying in bulk from developers because we're pooling all of our resources. And as a result of that, we're getting effectively bulk buying discount from developers, from the seller when we buy these properties. And I think in the case of the Monroe, we've acquired very high finished product in the most A-grade location in Johannesburg. And I believe we've acquired those units at a meaningful discount to the market price. If an individual were to try and buy a single unit at the Monroe, they'd be paying a higher price than we are. And I think that's quite compelling for EasyProperties investors.
It's quite attractive already, just hearing you mention the location of this new property, the vibe around it. I already want to, if I wasn't invested in it already, I already want to invest in it because of the luxury just, surrounding the Monroe. So before I continue, I can see that there are quite a few questions in our chat section. I'm going to ask that everyone to please ask your questions in the Q&A section so that we are able to see your questions at the end. And also we have Lisedi from our team who's going to also help you, answer some of the platform related questions that you might have. So Andrew, as we know, the Monroe is still under construction, right? And it's based in such an amazing location, but why do you think it's such an attractive investment, especially like investing in a property that is still under construction? Why do you think people should still invest in such a property?
So we were comfortable buying units that are still under construction in this case, because firstly, it's a very well-known developer who's bringing this product online. So it's an experienced developer who we're very familiar with, and they've got a good track record in Johannesburg of bringing quality product online. The building is very far advanced, so it's more than 4 stories out the ground as we speak. So that the developer's past the point of no return. This building is going to be in existence very soon. And lastly, the time until occupation is, in our view, not very far away. So we expect completion of this building and occupation to be in March 2022. So by the time that we've completed our EP raise and processed all of the transfer documentation, etc., we're going to be very close to occupation date. There's sometimes a premium as well that's unlocked between the price you pay when a development is underway versus what it's worth when it's completed. So we're also hoping to unlock a premium based on committing early. Sometimes the property market rewards you for committing early.
Awesome. So say I'm still deciding, so by the way, the property is 25%, just above 25% funded already. And I think which is amazing because we've only launched it last week and it's just exciting. It's just comes to show how exciting the property is, especially because of
Absolutely.
The location. So what are some of the amenities we can expect as investors at the Monroe?
So I've hopped on about how much value we've purchased and the price that we've bought at, but the Monroe ultimately is a luxury product. It's in a top tier area and all of the amenities ultimately match that. So we're talking about rooftop pool, rooftop bar, very high tier finishes. You in an area where there's all of the best gyms within a couple of 100 meters of you. It's a very Instagrammable location, which I know you'll like, Manolo. Sorry, I'm getting some lag here. I don't know if you can still hear me.
How's it, Andrew?
I'm back.
Oh, you're back, P.
I'm back. You know, my internet keeps on failing me, guys. I'm sorry. My apologies. It's some of the things that we don't have control over. I was still
We're all just doing
saying,
our
thank you
best.
so much for jumping in, Les. I see that you have, I see you jumped in with his drip. So I appreciate Lisedi for coming on board and repping Easy. Please, much appreciated, Les. So thank you so much for highlighting some of those, you know, Instagrammable amenities, very much attractive to millennials and very much attractive is considering the fact that we exist in a very digital era. Hashtag aesthetics, hashtag we want everything that looks nice, that feels nice, but most importantly, that's value of our money. And,
Absolutely.
you know, even though the property exactly. So even though the property is for construction, can investors expect, you know, to still earn their interest on a property that's still under construction?
Absolutely, yes. So on conclusion of all of EasyProperties raises, the capital that's raised goes into attorney trust account and earns interest up until transfer date. So on some of the properties that we've sold so far, for example, like the Rockefeller, which has been under construction for most of this year, we've declared dividends to investors into that asset, but those dividends have been purely interest income so far. You can definitely expect rental income to exceed the returns that you're going to receive as interest, but there's a number of factors to consider in each property investment. And in the case of the Rockefeller, where there's been a long holding period, we think that investors will be more than compensated because they've received a bigger discount to retail prices. So there's a bit of a trade-off to be considered when looking at these various opportunities.
Nice. And, you know, this was going to be part of my questions, but I see there's a user, Stephen, who's asked, what's the discount on these bulk, you know, purchases?
Yeah, so so this varies property to property. I think in the case of the Monroe, it's about 8% below market value that we're paying.
Nice. And I would assume that, you know, we have more flexibility with units or apartments like the Monroe. Can you tell us more about the flexibility? What do we mean when we say we have flexibility when it comes to these properties?
Yeah, sure. So we've got flexibility in the case of the Monroe because short stay operations are allowed there. And what that means is that as a property owner, you've always got you sometimes have the choice between placing a long-term tenant in your unit and collecting rental income that way, or operating your unit as a short stay unit, i.e. under like an Airbnb type model. And at different times and for different properties, you can make more income from short stay operations than from long stay operations. In the case of the Monroe, we permitted to run short stay operations there, and it will probably be the case that we run a combination. So we'll lease some of our units out on a long-term basis, and we'll run short stay on some of the units. That's investors into the Blood asset will be familiar with that. We're running a combination of long and short stay there. And that's a very good example because our short stay units at the Blood are actually outperforming our long stay units. So there is sometimes a premium that you can earn from running a short stay operation. And at Monroe, we'll run that in a way that maximizes returns to our investors based on where the market's at.
Thank you so much, Andrew, for that. Sure, you've mentioned a lot of like luxurious things attached to investing in the Monroe. So if I was a new investor and I haven't heard of EasyProperties before, I would ultimately think with that much offering, it's obviously not accessible, or I need a minimum amount of money before I can invest in a property such as the Monroe. What are the minimums when investing into the Monroe specifically?
So it's the same as all of EasyProperties investments. There, I think the minimum is R1. So the principle that we've tried to bring is accessibility. It's the same ethos that EasyEquities has become famous for, and it's applied at EasyProperties as well. There's virtually no minimums to investments.
So catch your sub if that was your question. Just know that the minimum you can invest with as little as R1, R5, however amount of money you can afford to invest in. So you spoke a bit about the flexibility that investors will be exposed to. As part of that flexibility, the opportunity to be able to rent. Can investors rent in a property like the Monroe?
We'd love that. I don't think that's happened to date in any of EasyProperties assets. But if we could lease one of our units to one of our investors, that's our first prize. We believe all of the investors into EasyProperties have the biggest vested interest in taking care of the units. So we'd love nothing more than to lease units to our investors, and we'd even do special deals on pricing if they are our investors.
Awesome. I think, people are getting excited, obviously, especially when we release new IPOs. So there's a question here that says, I think it's from Refilwe, and they want to know if they can make an offer on more than one property under their EasyProperties account.
Yeah, so at the moment, Exchange Lofts, our previous listing closed last Friday, I think. So at the moment, there's just the one asset listed on EasyProperties. So you can only make an offer on one asset at present. There's another asset which goes live on this coming Monday. So you can buy as many assets as are listed on the platform, I think is probably the right answer to that question.
Absolutely. So let's chat more about dividends. There is an attendee together wants to know, they are new to EasyProperties. So when will the dividends payment happen?
So we've got a published
March?
Sorry.
Is it after, excuse me, Andrew, is it after March when the Monroe is completed, or how will the dividends work?
So there is a small degree of variability in that, because we ultimately subject to the deeds office in terms of when our properties transfer into our name. And we have run into small delays this year, especially because of COVID, like some transfers have taken up to 3 months. In general, and on the earliest EasyProperties properties, dividends are being paid quarterly. There's a dividend run, for example, at the end of this coming month. So in another couple of weeks. And I think it's safe to say that within anywhere between 3 and 6 months from the closing of an IPO is when you can expect to receive your first dividend, and then it'll be every 3 months thereafter.
Thank you, Andrew. It seems I didn't read Rufila's question properly. She actually wants to know if she can make more than one offer on one property.
Maybe she's referring to the auction process.
She will then need to clarify. But let's
so she can make multiple offers. Yeah. So during an IPO, before the auction, she can submit as many purchase requests as she wishes. So if she wants to buy an amount today and amount tomorrow, that's fine. She can buy as many times as she likes.
Cool, there you go, Refilo. And there is a question that always surfaces, right, all the time when I browse through EasyProperties. And this is a question, are the returns constant across all the properties on our platform? How do the returns actually work with each property?
So there's detail in each and every listing. And I think that we can do some work on how we better present that. But ultimately, every asset's returns are different. There's assets that are higher yielding in the form of dividend income, but offer less potential for capital growth over the longer term. And there's the opposite. So there's assets that are yielding less on a quarterly basis, but because we've purchased them at a discount or because we really like the area that the property's in, we expect there to be longer term capital appreciation. So the return profiles of the assets are very different. And it's a case of just needing to assess each opportunity individually.
Thank you so much for that, Andrew. So we're going to dive into more questions. So Lesego wants to know, is it possible that we make a loss on EasyProperties? Because we've mentioned a lot of amazing things around property investing, but can investors make a loss on property?
So there are doomsday scenarios where if, for example, all of our units were not tenanted and we had very little income, it is possible to lose money that way. In my opinion, and I think the numbers will support it, it's very unlikely because we're buying a pool of units. It's very unlikely that all of our units would be vacant at one time. There's definitely vacancies in any property investment, but given the level of gearing that we use and given that we're holding large numbers of units, losses are very unlikely. But what you can expect more in the case of EasyProperties is variability in returns. So sometimes you might earn more rental income versus less. Certain assets are going to outperform, some are going to underperform, but there's not a major risk of capital loss.
Absolutely. And I think it's very important to note that, our property investing is a long-term process. It's a long-term journey. So you can't, expect to see miracles overnight. It's a long-term process. And
exactly.
I think EasyProperties is a great platform because there are so many resources that you can visit to read and up your knowledge regarding property investing. So Noah wants to know, are we focusing on properties all over the country in all provinces, or are we only focusing in Gauteng? And I would assume this question comes because, we've had the exchange and now we have the Monroe in Rosebank. Those two properties are like almost in close proximity to each other geographically. So I think they just want to know, looking at, the future of EasyProperties, are we only looking at Gauteng?
So to date, we've successfully listed 2 Cape Town assets as well. So that was the Rockefeller and Black Brick in Cape Town. But the answer to the question is that we ultimately want to provide access to the full spectrum of property opportunities. So that definitely includes KZN for us. There's nodes in KZN where there is significant developments and investors are seeing good capital growth, and ultimately overseas as well. So if you look further enough forward in our timeline, we hope to have covered South Africa to a large extent, and we hope to be offering international properties as well.
So just stay put, stay tuned, because there are a lot of
big things
interesting and exciting things coming.
Yes, and can I add to that, Benolo?
Yeah.
So it's not always just going to be residential property as well. So this, as you know, we're excited about a number of commercial property assets that are soon going to be coming to the platform.
Absolutely. And talking about, student accommodations, I know we do have students on here as well. So, that might be something that they want to look into as we, drop new exciting IPOs.
Absolutely. It's an asset we like.
Absolutely. And I know we touched on a few benefits of investing into property, but I think let's highlight some of the major or the key benefits of investing in property. I see there's a question from Monroe. They want to know, what exactly are the benefits of investing in property? And I think that's a very important question because it comes up a lot, especially to new property investors. So why should I invest in property? As investors, do we earn rental income or do we get dividends income only? So let's just clarify that.
Yeah, so why should you invest in property? Property is an asset class that offers stable returns. So you can expect there's definitely variability in your rental income, but it's quite predictable, especially when you're holding a large number of units, as EasyProperties is. So you're getting predictability of income. The return that you're earning is typically greater than an interest rate. So for example, if you look at some of our previous listings, like Green Park, for example, investors in Green Park are earning a net 9%. And if you compare that to your interest rates in a bank, it's obviously much higher. The fixed deposit interest rate now is anywhere between 3% and 4%. So the first benefit of property is stable rental returns, returns in excess of interest rates. And the last major benefit of property and where ultimately fortunes have been made in the past is capital appreciation. As you mentioned, it's a long-term investment, but over the long term, property has shown great potential for capital appreciation. So if you're a long-term holder of property, you're collecting rental income over the term of your investment, and hopefully when you sell the investment at year 5+, the value of that property will have gone up materially, and EP investors will see the benefit of that.
Absolutely. And I hope after that, insight, people will not want to withdraw. But there is a question that, talks about withdrawing, especially as a property investor. So Brady wants to know that if he's a first-time investor on EasyProperties, and if he invests, can he change his mind, and can he withdraw without penalties? What does that mean? Let's help Brady there a bit.
Sure. So this is a major benefit of EasyProperties, and a way that we've reduced friction in the property investment space. There are enormous costs in buying a property, and there's enormous costs in selling a property. If you were to buy a property on your own, at EasyProperties, we've created auction capability. And what that means is that on a periodic basis, investors into a particular asset can put their shares up for sale, and other investors are able to purchase those shares. So it's on a 3-monthly basis at the moment. I think the very next auction on existing properties opens this Friday, and that'll be an opportunity for investors who've bought in the past and who need liquidity now to sell their shares and ultimately access their cash again. As you've said, that's property investment is a long-term game, and I think that shouldn't be anyone's first prize. But we do understand that if people change their mind, or if you have an immediate need for cash, there is the option for the investor to get his money back.
Absolutely. So Pilani wants to know, right? I think they're referring more to the IPO season, between open and close season. So Pilani wants to know, I would assume he brought shares currently funded in the exchange lofts, and he found some extra cash into his wallet. So, and this was after it was closed. Then, I would assume that he invested post the IPO, and he found some extra cash in his wallet. What does that mean, and how does that work? What's that extra cash? So maybe let's talk about the IPO season, open and close season.
Yes. So for an investor tracking the progress of an IPO, that you'll see that it moves on a percentage basis up to 100%. On EasyProperties, our IPOs are linked to a time frame. So even if the asset has reached 100% subscribed, it's possible for that asset to become oversubscribed and go past 100%. When that happens, what the platform does is allocate everyone their proportionate share of that listing. So for example, if an asset is 200% subscribed, all of the investors into that class will only receive 50% of what they applied for in that asset, and they'll receive the balance back as cash into their account. So they'll receive half their money back. So that in that case, I believe that's why he would have had extra cash in his bank, in his wallet on EasyProperties.
Yeah, and with that extra cash, there's always a new IPO on our platform. That's where you can put your money in, instead of the money just sitting there and making your account look good when you can actually be using that money to invest it into more property.
Absolutely. There'll always be another one.
Exactly. So we always talk about dividends. Tom wants to know, are the quarterly dividends guaranteed on all the properties?
So that depends on a property by property basis. You'll see that some of the transactions on the platform have rental guarantees in place. And that's where the seller has guaranteed the rental income that we receive as investors for a period, for example, 12 or 18 months. And in that case, there'll be no variability in the dividend. We know exactly what the dividend payments are going to be. There are properties where we do not have rental guarantees. And in those cases, there's variability in the returns because we could, for example, have vacancies and then dividends would be lower than expected. Or in the case of the Blood, for example, we could earn returns in excess of what we forecast, and then your dividends are going to be higher. So it depends on an asset by asset basis.
Cool. David also wants to know, is there a maturation date on the properties, or do investors hold until they decide to sell?
So each of the so every time there's an IPO, it goes into something called an SPV. And each of these investments has an indicative 5-year term. So at year 5, we'll assess where the market's at and if we can realize a gain on our investments. And we'd look to secure an exit at that time.
Cool. And then Sianda wants to know, can they only sell their property shares when there is an auction? Let's talk a bit about auctions on EasyProperties.
Yeah, that's correct. So they're periodic auctions. I think they're quarterly. And as I said, there's new auctions that open this Friday. And that is your window, your time opportunity to sell shares if you're an investor. Outside of those periods, you cannot trade in your shares. Correct.
Yeah, so I think that's the difference between like EasyEquities and EasyProperties. So it's not like you can just buy and sell it overnight. You just have to wait for those auction periods.
Yes, that's right.
Awesome. And then Hotazo wants to know, does it, I think they're already talking about and thinking about aesthetics. They want to know if they want to stay at the property with family just for a day as an investor, do they get a discount when paying?
Unfortunately not. We ultimately, we can't jeopardize any other investors into that asset class. So just trust that we'll be making as much money as we can for investors from our properties. And that probably means no discounts, even for investors, I'm afraid.
Awesome. I think Ferry wants to know, I think we've answered this question. Is there a limit as to how many shares one can buy? And we've already answered that. I think there isn't a limit.
No limits.
Just keep on investing. As long as that IPO is still open, let's keep on investing. I think I saw a question earlier is around REITs. Someone wants to know, is EasyProperties a REIT?
So EasyProperties is not a REIT. So a REIT is a traded JSE share. It has a number of criteria that it has to meet in order to be a REIT. And it's also subject to just a completely different set of regulations. So EasyProperties is not a REIT.
Thank you so much for that, Andrew. We've got a question from Anonymous. They want to know, would you recommend those who can actually visit the site? So I think one thing that our investors don't know is that you can actually visit their properties. Is that true?
So I think it's possible to visit a place like the Blood or like the Polo Fields, because those are to some degree open to the public at times, but the same rules apply to these properties as any other property. If you're not a resident there, it's not possible to visit. So we respect our tenants and we wouldn't want to disrupt anyone who's staying in one of our properties.
Absolutely. I think there's a platform question from Zizo. She or he says, I've been looking for the Monroe on my EasyEquities app, but I can't EasyProperties app, but I can't see it anywhere. Is it me, or it's not live yet? It is definitely live. And
Definitely.
cool. And then I'm just going through questions. I know I'm scrolling through questions because some of the questions we've answered and some of the questions are similar. We spoke a bit about auctions and how they work. Our next auction is soon, so property investors can look out for that. And yeah, emails, socials, will be posting that information for you to know when we have our auction periods. And then we have another question. Why aren't the IPOs first come, first served to prevent my investment being diluted by an oversubscription? Sorry about that.
So unfortunately, that's been governed by all of our prospectuses go through the CIPC for approval and ultimately are subject to a lot of scrutiny. And that requirement that the IPO runs for a period of time is stipulated upon us. So it's not a choice that we don't have the functionality or the optionality to close an IPO the minute it hits 100%, unfortunately. But Easy Equities is very much an access for all type platform. So we quite like that people can still invest and take the IPO above 100%, and ultimately everyone's able to get a share in a property.
Absolutely. So who decides the rental prices for the tenants? Is it EasyProperties? Is it the Monroe? Is it you, Narrative?
So we've got an investment committee at EasyProperties, and that decision would fall very much within that investment committee. So there's 5 members on that committee. It's myself and my partner Jamie from Narrative, and then it's Rupert, who's the CEO of EasyProperties, and then it's Charles Savage and Gary van Dijk at Purple Group. So it's a comprehensive committee that deliberates and discusses all of these matters before we make any decisions.
Thank you for that. So how long do investors hold, or we hold, the properties for, and what happens to our share when we decide to sell the property?
So at year 5, if we proceed to sell the property, we would distribute all the proceeds from that sale to investors. So that share would ultimately, it would cease to exist in effect, and investors would receive all of the gross proceeds from that, a return of all the capital that we realize at year 5.
Yeah. And here's a question that I've been actually itching to ask. Is there any benefit to buying into the IPO early? Does it make sense, to hold my cash earnings interest until the near end of the IPO?
So there isn't a benefit to subscribing early, other than just to get that weight off of your mind and sleep at night knowing that you've secured your units in the Monroe. But otherwise, at what stage in the IPO you invest, there's no differential.
Cool. It seems like there's a question that keeps on surfacing. William says, are we able to increase our investment after the exchange loss is closed, not necessarily with funds coming back from oversubscription?
So no, once the IPO is closed, the number of shares is allocated, and that's the investor's final allocation to that asset. The only opportunity an investor will have to increase a particular investment of theirs, if they wanted more exchange lofts, for example, would be to wait for the first auction. And then if any investors are wanting to sell at the first auction, they could buy those shares on the open market.
Absolutely. In the investment space, we always talk about risk appetites. Let's talk about the relationship, between risk appetites and property investing. Can you tell us a bit about that?
So property investment relative to shares, for example, it's going to be considered a less risky investment. So as I've said, property returns are more stable, more predictable, and you've got a very real, very hard asset that you can see. There's bricks and there's a building in front of you that can't that no one can say isn't there. We've all seen shares, for example, that can halve in value overnight or go to zero, for example. So property investment is definitely lower on the risk spectrum than equity investment, and certainly less risky than unlisted investments or anything like that.
Yeah. There is a question from Anonymous again. They want to know, how do you do the validation of property?
So again, that goes through the EasyProperties Investment Committee. Our job as Narrative is to go out there and source opportunities and negotiate opportunities, and then we present those deals to the investment committee. And at that point, there's a fortune of scrutiny that happens. There's a lot of discussion around whether we're paying the right prices for these things. Are we comfortable that we're buying in the right areas? Is there potential for longer term growth for investors? All these kinds of considerations go into that validation process.
You know, I think we touch on this in most of our webinars, or in most of our communication on socials or via email. So, but let's talk about it again. What happens in the event that an IPO is not successful?
So in the event that we don't reach 100% in the time frame that we've allowed, all of the capital is returned to investors, and the asset is not purchased. So it's effectively a failed IPO, and that's the end of that story.
Cool. So we've got a lot of questions coming in, but we've gone a bit over time, and the questions are coming through. So if we haven't answered your questions, there are a lot of FAQs that you can visit on our platform. Just visit our properties at easyequities.co.za, and you can basically find all of the answers that you're looking for on there. Alternatively, visit our YouTube channel. We are listed under the Easy Equities YouTube page. That's where we also have a lot of resources for you to visit, to answer some and most of the questions that you have that we couldn't answer on here. But
we can do a part 2 as well, Bonolo, if you like.
We can definitely do a part 2, but we are going to have another session next week, Tuesday. So our investors can look forward to that. Keep your eyes on our social media platforms. We will share more information about that. We will also share information around auctions and when a property is paying dividends. So we will always communicate that to our investors. Just check your emails, check our social media platforms, and we will notify you. So thank you so much. We've had, such great engagement on here. People are asking questions, valid questions. People are excited, and we wouldn't do it without our investors, and for them asking these questions, helping us to improve and do better, and telling us what it is that they want. So from myself, Andrew, thank you so much, from EasyProperties to you, Narrative. We just want to say thank you for partnering with us, and for just being amazing partners, and for giving our investors really cool, stylish, and luxurious properties for them to put their money into. And yeah, this is not the last webinar. As I've mentioned, we've got one coming up next week, very exciting. We'll drop the information before the end of this week. You can also expect to find this webinar. If you've joined us late, we will upload it onto our YouTube channel. We are under the Easy Equities YouTube page under EasyProperties. So yeah, just look out for that. And Andrew, again, thank you so much for your time, for making time to chat to us this afternoon.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you to you, Bonolo.
Yes.
All right.
Bye.
Cheers, everyone.
Jengalanga pume kuseni. Sweetie baby, Jack, stop, sweet. Jengalanga sit back again. Sweetie baby, Jack, stop, sweet. The taste of your lips on mine. Sweetie baby, Jack, stop, sweet. Tanda lwako, baby. So easy, so easy. So easy, so easy. Tanda good, baby. You make it easy. Check out the formula, baby. So easy, so easy. So easy, so easy. You make it easy. Check out the formula, baby. Been so